John, I've always wondered what really caused World War One. I know the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand played a role, but was that the only reason?
Good question. The assassination in June 1914 was the spark, but the causes ran much deeper. Europe was already divided into two rival alliance systems, the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente of Britain, France, and Russia.
So the alliances dragged countries into war they might not have joined otherwise?
Exactly. Once Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia mobilized to defend Serbia, and Germany declared war on Russia and France. Britain then joined after Germany invaded Belgium. Within weeks, what started as a local conflict became a full-scale world war.
But were alliances the only cause?
No, there were also long-term factors: militarism, nationalism, and imperialism. Militarism meant countries were building up huge armies and navies ready for war. Nationalism caused intense rivalries, especially in the Balkans, and imperialism created competition for colonies in Africa and Asia. All of this made Europe a powder keg just waiting for a spark.
I've read that trench warfare defined the war. Was it really as awful as people say?
Worse, actually. Soldiers on the Western Front dug miles of trenches from the English Channel to Switzerland. They lived in freezing mud, surrounded by rats, lice, and the constant stench of decay. Disease was rampant. Things like trench foot and dysentery were common.
And battles like the Somme or Verdun, those were fought in the trenches, right?
Yes, at the Battle of the Somme in 1916, the British suffered nearly 60,000 casualties on the first day alone. In total, the battle caused over 1 million casualties with very little territory gained. It showed how deadly machine guns, barbed wire, and artillery had made warfare.
Did they use new weapons too?
Definitely. Poison gas like chlorine and mustard gas was introduced, causing horrific burns and suffocation. Tanks and airplanes appeared for the first time, but the technology was so new that it often caused chaos instead of breakthroughs.
It sounds like the soldiers were caught between old tactics and new technology.
Exactly. Generals still use 19th century strategies, but the 20th century weapons made them devastatingly deadly.
But why do we call it a world war if most of the fighting was in Europe?
Because the European empires dragged their colonies into it. Britain and France brought in troops from India, Africa, Australia, and Canada. The Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers, which opened fronts in the Middle East. Japan entered on the side of the Allies, and later, the U.S. joined in 1917.
So soldiers from across the world fought in Europe's war.
Yes, millions of them. For example, over 1 million Indian soldiers served overseas, and thousands of African soldiers were recruited or forced into labor. The war reshaped global politics. It weakened European empires and boosted the U.S. as a world power.
I guess it also changed societies back home.
Exactly. With so many men at the front, women worked in factories, farms, and offices. That shift helped strengthen women's suffrage movements. Culturally, the war left a sense of disillusionment, which you can see in the art and literature of the 1920s. People called it the lost generation.
And how did it all end?
The tide turned when the U.S. entered the war in 1917, providing fresh troops and resources. By late 1918, Germany was exhausted, facing blockades and internal unrest. On November 11, 1918, the armistice was signed, ending the fighting.
That's the day we now mark as Remembrance Day, right?
Yes. Then came the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. It imposed harsh reparations on Germany, forced them to disarm, and stripped them of territory. Germany had to accept full responsibility for the war.
That must have created resentment.
Exactly. Many historians believe the treaty's harshness planted the seeds for World War II. Meanwhile, 4 great empires, the German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian, collapsed. New nations like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia were born.
And the League of Nations was created to keep peace, right?
Yes, but it lacked real power. The U.S. never joined, and without strong enforcement, it couldn't prevent future conflicts.
So World War One was meant to be the war to end all wars, but instead it set the stage for another.
Exactly. It changed the political map, introduced modern warfare, and reshaped societies. The world that emerged after 1918 was completely different from the one that went into the war.
It's sobering. Millions of lives lost, society shaken, and yet the lessons weren't enough to stop history from repeating itself.
That's why studying it is so important. It reminds us how fragile peace really is.